Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Michael and Patty Show on this absolutely beautiful spring, end of March day. Good morning, Patty.
Good morning, Michael.
Welcome aboard. You're looking a little sleepy. I'm wondering why.
I actually just got back from Nashville doing a 3-day education session with an organization called the Residential Real Estate Council. I have my CRS designation and I take education very seriously. So I travel to the U.S. all over every year for this major educational event.
So how many days am I going to have to listen to? You're still on Central Time and you're 2 hours behind.
I had 29 hours of travel, which did not help, and 3 hours of sleep during that time period just to get from the U.S. back to Canada. So it feels very good to be back home. I will adjust my schedule soon enough.
Well, it's nice to see you back in the 51st state.
It's funny. Nice to be back in Canada.
Absolutely. Well, welcome aboard. Let's get started here. And if you're new to the podcast, we cover everything Prince Edward Island real estate and more, and general real estate topics. And if there's anything you want to know more about, or if you want to find out more about PEI real estate, be sure to visit our YouTube channels, Twitter feeds, Instagram, threads, or newsletters go out weekly. And one handy-dandy website is gov.pe.ca. And if you're a tourist, or maybe if you're not, and you want maps and magazines about the island, go to peiplay.com. If there's anything you'd like to see on our YouTube channels, let us know. Or if you have any questions about Prince Edward Island real estate or PEI in general, shoot us an email or a tweet or a fax. You still have a fax machine?
I actually do still
there you go.
fax.
I got rid of mine months or years ago. First thing we're going to cover is the stats, and we're actually going to touch on the national stats too, because as I've said before, the problem with the PEI stats is our market is so thin, the numbers are so small that it doesn't take much to make major differences in them. So home sales are up 9.6%, and just to give you an idea of the numbers we're looking at, home sales numbered 126 units in February 2025, up 9.6% compared to the 115 units sold in 2024. So it doesn't take much to make it look like sales are happening, which in reality is it's just the closing dates have been changed and just happened to end up in February rather than January or March.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not a significant, doesn't seem like a significant number, but when you're looking at percentile, almost 10% seems like quite the growth.
Right, but we're only talking, 10 units, 9 units?
Yeah.
And a unit being a house or land or whatever. I guess this would probably be residential. Yeah, this is based on residential data. Market is balanced, but we're back to being slightly tilted in favor of sellers. New listings are up 13.8%, 231 new listings this year, up 13.8% compared to 203 in 2024. And the benchmark price, which is supposed to be a typical house in Prince Edward Island, is $361,800, up 1.6% from $356,200 in 2024. Realistically speaking, I don't think you're going to find much of a house in PEI for $360,000 in the cities, do you?
Not much, as in it'll be a dated home that is in need of repair, some work for sure, and possibly not having a garage.
Although I did make an offer on a house this week or last week was on for $100,000. That turned into a real circus when you were away. We'll talk about that. I don't think we're talking about that on this podcast, but maybe the next one. There was 50 showings and 25 or 26 offers.
Okay.
Did I mention that?
You did mention there were quite a few, and I also, did you get the property?
No.
Who wrote the offer?
Me.
Ah, interesting.
We were 50% above ask, and it sold for 68.3% above ask. And my guidance was 75%. My client didn't want to do 75%. We would have got the house if they listened to my guidance. Regardless, On to the next deal. The national stats, when we look at that, and that's why I say sometimes you need to look at the national stats in relativity to the Prince Edward Island stats, because they just paint a totally different picture. They're telling us that home sales dropped about 10% month over month. Actual, not seasonally adjusted monthly activity came in at 10% below. The number of newly listed properties fell 12%. The MLS HPI home price index declined 0.8% month over month, was down 1% on a year-over-year basis. The actual, not seasonally adjusted national average sale price fell 3.3%. So it tells a very dismal story in relativity to ours, which just makes it sound like things are booming. But I don't feel that. Haven't you noticed a lot of open house signs, which I really haven't seen in years? I mean, just around the corner from me, there's 4 of them on one corner. You're starting to see price reduced signs, and these are all indications that things are slowing down, and the fact signage is lasting longer, sitting in front of houses sometimes for months.
Yeah, and some of it could be the season as well. We've had such an awesome winter. Right now, it is March 2025, and you wouldn't know, you would assume outside, it looks like we're well into April with the way the temperature. So that's one reason, the weather. The other reason, people were pricing their properties based on numbers still, I feel, from 2021, 2022. So we're still experiencing 2023 and 2024 price corrections. 2025, they're starting to turn up the heat with their agent saying, what are you doing? Why hasn't it sold? You know, possibly waiving I'm going to find a different miracle agent to get it sold at the inflated price that I'm looking for. So they're upping their marketing strategies and saying, well, let's do open houses and see how much traffic we can get through. Or it could be the seller insisting, feeling like they want more showing. So there's a bunch going on. I think weather is definitely stimulating the open house signs that we are seeing popping up, but hopefully we'll see some more price corrections continue. I think most have done a bit of a reset, but there is still overpriced listings.
And invariably, the overpriced listings, even though if you tell them from day one or they tell you from day one that they're overpriced substantially, they'll be the ones that drive you nuts. And they'll typically be the ones that want to cancel the contract and list with another agent, because, of course, that other agent's going to be able to get them twice what the house is worth. And that doesn't happen. So they go through a series of price reductions over the course of months or years. Eventually, what does the house sell for?
Pretty much exactly what the original CMA, especially now, our numbers, we're not going to see any, massive price increases or anything. Life seems pretty stable and calm right now where we are. I feel they're going to be sitting for just a little bit longer.
And this wasn't on our list, but you mentioned before the podcast that the Canadian Real Estate Association, otherwise known as CREA, has sold Realtor.ca to a private entity. Now, I haven't done any research on this. I thought they just put that asset into its own little bucket, so to speak, for tax purposes, but you're telling me it's sold to a private interest, which to me says you're going to see a lot of changes with Realtor.ca. It's probably going to turn into more like a Twillo in the States where everybody's paying for advertising and everything else.
Yes, I do feel there's going to be some big changes with how real estate is done here in Canada.
Awesome. I look forward to the changes. I received an email when you were away having a great old party time in Nashville, probably watched some country and western singers all day long.
I don't think so. I was in class, long days, which is why I'm pretty tired.
Well, CREA sent out an email to all members, and there's probably, how many CREA members? There's got to be at least a couple 100,000.
Oh, at least, yes.
So what they're looking for is $75 from each member because they are into lawsuits up to their neck. Legal costs ballooned from $626,000 in 2023 to more than $4 million in 2024, an increase of nearly 540%. Since its inception in 2006, the legal fund has maintained $2 million. Now they want to raise that amount to $10 million. Sounds to me like there's a problem in the system.
There does sound like a problem in the system.
What do you think's causing all these lawsuits conveniently at the same time or coincidentally that we have this massive influx of agents right across the continent?
Yeah, we did discuss it a little bit, Michael, and one of the things that we discussed was education. I skimmed through the newsletter memo that they sent out, and they were talking about two cases, which I'll have to reference and see what those are about. But they also spoke about the Competition Act and our responsibilities there. At the end of the day, and what I agree along with you on, is it comes down to education and the level in which we are operating in our industry, which then is at CREA's responsibility. And they have tried to improve their CREA Learning Hub, tried to increase the amount of content available to realtors in our industry. But then it comes back to the individual associations within the provinces. Some provinces with one, like Prince Edward Island, and other provinces, they have multiple associations. There's too many, and during 2020 and 2021, we just seem to have had a license to print money, and everyone wanted to get the real estate license. So our market has ended up with a surplus. We're saturated with realtors whose intention isn't to necessarily service and take care of a client, but to just make money and see how much they can, pocket themselves, which is not what this business is all about.
And unfortunately, as a real estate agent, your only requirement is to do your credits. And in PEI, it's 3 credits. But these credits, they're pretty easy. I mean, you listen to an hour seminar or whatever. I've done 3 or 4 of them or 3 of them in this year because I've taken them all. It's not mind-bending stuff. I mean, the real estate agents overall, we need to turn our licensing into more like an accountant or a lawyer or some other professional rather than just taking a course, in PEI. You take it at night at your convenience while you're working your full-time job. And then a few weeks later, a couple months later, whatever it is, you have your license and you're out selling. And invariably, you're writing contracts that may or may not be very well written. The 6 most important things about representing a buyer is, and this is where most of these lawsuits are coming from, I would guess, is transparency, 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 and disclose, 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 which are all the same thing. I think a lot of times you get into situations where they're picking between being honest about the property and what you can do with it, or what they can disclose and getting a commission check. And sometimes it's stuff that the vendor hasn't disclosed, which on the listing side should have been taken care of as well in a perfect world with a good listing agent.
And that's the thing too, a good listing agent, you just can't get your license and then expect to walk into a house, get a contract signed, and then put up a sign and assume that's my work at the end of the day. There's so much research and your due diligence. And I mean, one of the courses that you can take through CREA is how to measure a house. That's like an hour-long course. And these are the people that are representing, unfortunately, if they do just the bare minimum requirement as it is here on PEI. I can't speak for other associations across Canada, but these are the people that are handling hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of other people's money. You would like to think the bar's a little higher. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why there's an extra $75 assessment to, for CREA, for all these legal matters that seem to be going on that was not being necessarily shared with us.
Well, you're doing a great job, and I'm glad to see you're taking some time out of your busy schedule to travel all over the place to add to your education repertoire, so to speak. And I know you pass that down to your agents. And I don't think you probably saw a lot of other brokers there from Canada that are doing the same.
There were 3 realtors from Canada down at Celebration, and this year was in Nashville. CRS designation is not an easy designation. You can get your ABR, accredited buyer's representative. There's lots of designations that you'll see acronyms beside people's names. And it's a day course, 4 hours, or maybe 2 days or 2 afternoons, and then they get their little, accreditation and their acronyms beside their name. A CRS agent is somebody that worked hard at getting that, taking multiple courses. In some cases, you're taking 40 to 60 hours worth of education and training. It's also based on productivity and your actual skill set as a realtor. So the CRS, we're part of the top 2% of realtors on the planet. And again, it is not an easy designation, and one that I would be highly recommending. I know you are a CRS agent, Michael, so good job. But it is something that, again, the public isn't aware of. And if we don't educate and let them know that there are higher accreditations and credentials that they should and could ask of their realtor, that's what Celebration is all about. And that's why I am such a huge advocate and proponent of the value of it.
So there's a total of 3 CRS agents in PEI. And I think, who's the third? Lauren?
Yes, from my office.
So Lauren McLean's the third. Moving on. I was walking through that duplex there a couple of weeks with you, and I couldn't help but think there's a number of systems that, if you're buying a house in Prince Edward Island and other places in Canada and the States, that should be maintained on a yearly basis. I don't know if a lot of people do this. I know I'm guilty of not doing probably a third of what should be done, but I'm on top of the other stuff. And one of those things is, and I never even thought about this, but cleaning your heat pump. Heat pumps have become huge in Prince Edward Island because the provincial government's been subsidizing the installations of them. But I didn't realize up until such time as I talked to you, as these things are getting disgustingly dirty and need to be cleaned, which of course is going to affect the performance of the machine.
Yes, you have the risk of just dust, dog hair buildup, and even mold during the changing seasons. And once your heat pump ends up contaminated with this, they don't run efficiently. You shorten the lifespan of it, and you end up breathing in some poor quality air. When I had installed, we have 4 heat pumps in our office, 2 heads, and we make sure the year after they were installed, every year they've been serviced and cleaned just to ensure the lifespan, and also to make sure all the agents in my office are breathing good, clean, quality air.
So as long as we're talking about air, we'll talk about the other things that will put disgusting air into your body. Air exchangers are another thing. Since modern homes are built so tight, they require an air exchanger to bring air in from outside to the house. And this is something that should be serviced, depending on what you read, every 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months would be ideal, best practice. But even once a year, so many people, they buy a home and we come in, they've lived in it for 5, 10 years. And I ask the question while I'm inspecting the property on my initial meeting, when was the last time you had your air exchanger cleaned? Oh, I'm not too sure. I don't know if you ever have. And I said, you might want to get that done, because a buyer is going to end up coming in here and doing a home inspection, and that's going to be somewhat indicative of, are you maintaining the systems that you have within your home? So get those air exchangers cleaned, if anything, at least once a year, but best practice is every 3 to 6 months.
Which leads you to think that you need to clean the ductwork, which supplies air and to and from the Zenmar or the air exchanger. And as long as you're doing that, you may as well remove a fire hazard, which could be your clothes dryer.
Oh, yes.
Yes, because it transports wet lint, and those can get filled depending on how long they are. Sometimes you see them in houses, they're 25, 30 feet long, and those will yield the most amount of gunk. So when you get your air exchanger unit cleaned, which, you remove the filter and put it in water and take the other filters out and clean them, you're going to clean the ductwork, and you're going to clean your dryer vent.
And on the dryer vent, you should be mindful of how long your dryer vent ductwork is within your home. If it's close to an external wall, it should be easy to clean. If it's something that runs from the middle of your home, 20 feet out, you probably are going to want to get a professional in and have that taken care of, because it is a fire risk.
And these little dehumidifiers, I personally had this happen about a month ago, where I took the front cover off this dehumidifier because it smelled disgusting, and the whole thing was filled with black gunk.
That's disgusting.
Good thing it was in your office and not mine. Chimneys are another thing. Fireplaces, get them clean because they build up, how do you pronounce it? Curacles?
Yes, I think you did. Good.
Curacles. Anyway, I don't know how to pronounce it. Particularly when you're burning wood. So get that checked out. You should get that inspected as well. Generators are another thing. You see people, since we had Fiona, everybody has a generator now. But if you're one of my neighbors, it's just sitting in your backyard resting away for the last 2 or 3 years. When was Fiona?
September 19th, 2022. Oh, September 24th, 2022.
Has it been that recent?
Yes.
So these generators been sitting around. That's something you probably want to start up every few months. I start mine monthly just to make sure they work. Because when we did have Fiona, one of the main problems was people had generators that didn't work because they're in their shed with gunked up carburetors and bad fuel, and they couldn't get their electricity back on. Gutters are another thing to maintain. And since most heating systems in Prince Edward Island are water-based radiators that are heated by a oil-fired burner, it's important to get these boilers cleaned yearly, not just so much to make sure they're clean, but so they're set up properly and the jet or the injector is clean and functioning, because it will save you fuel if it's running efficiently. And who I suggest getting any of these things done, with the exception of the generator, which would be a you job, is get somebody that specializes in these particular items, not a generalist. Do you have any tips on that?
I would just advise, put it in your calendar, whatever calendar system that you use. I use Google Calendar. I make sure that as soon as my cleaning is done on my heat pumps and my boiler system at my office, I automatically schedule it in my calendar. I schedule a call date, which I usually give myself a month prior to my due date to reach out to my heat pump guy and my boiler guy and to get the appointment booked. So I'm pretty consistent every year. My appointment ends up booked and arranged, and I stay on top of things, which hopefully extends and prolongs the life of your systems.
And you have a propane boiler, which is fairly rare on the island. And not only did it need cleaning, which I didn't think you'd ever have to clean anything that was propane fired, but they also inspect it, and you had issues with the installation of your propane boiler, which would have caused it to shut down. Correct?
Correct.
Not good.
No.
Moving along. This is the funny part of the podcast. Patty and I are listing a property, and it has tenants in it. And like most tenants, they don't want to leave when the house sells, even though their lease is going to be up soon. So what have they done? They've put all the garbage cans in front of the garage bays. It looks like they're building a small greenhouse on the front driveway. Any garbage at all is on their front deck. We've got kids' toys and endless crap in the front of the house. Not to mention all the window coverings look like there's a firefight with shotguns that destroyed all those. Do you think this is intentional? Because it doesn't look good when you drive by.
Well, I'm not going to speak on that particular
We're
situation.
Just speaking generally.
But hypothetically speaking, these are all telltale signs that the tenants do not want to move, and they may end up sabotaging the seller's ability to sell or to sell at a higher dollar.
So be aware, especially if you are an out-of-province seller, which in this particular case they are. Have somebody like Patty and I, or your agent, broker, property manager, get some pictures, walk through the place, make sure it's maintained. If you're going to put it on the market, how do you put this assertively? Evict the tenants?
You can't just evict on PEI. It's not so simple.
But if the lease is up, it's better to have a nice, clean, vacant unit than to have a unit that looks like it's destroyed and the tenants are deliberately trying to kill any potential for an offer coming in. And if an offer does come in, it's going to be a lowball offer because of the condition of the structure.
Yeah, and especially because we are in a balanced market in favor of a seller, you need to take advantage of that. If we were in a buyer's market, but right now, time is of the essence. We don't know how long our market is going to be like this. Things could change by the end of, say, third quarter this year, or by 2026, 2027. There's a window of opportunity, and you need to be on top of these things if you're wanting to get a good sale price, good value.
I had a client email me, and he owns a cottage, and there's a vacant lot next to him. And he was wondering how he could find out if this vacant lot would be available for a purchase. What do you recommend this cottage owner do to find out if that cottage lot is available for purchase?
Well, if they're just going to do this on their own, they could find out who their neighbor is. They could, which access PEI, the registry's office, it's public information. They could send them off a letter if they're not anyone local. I know you have down social media.
Find out who they are first. So you can find out who they are by just asking your agent, who are they? They can bring it up on the tax computer to cost you nothing. You can call the property office, and they should disclose it because it's public information, or you can get a subscription to GeoLink, which is quite expensive. I have social media there. What do I mean by that? Track them down on social media now that you know who they are.
Yeah, once you have their name, whether you're trying to do this on your own or you do have a trusted realtor that you work with or someone that has access to the system, yes, see if you can find them on social media. I've done that many times. I've sent off messages in Messenger just asking on behalf of another, buyer client who's got an interest in the property. Sometimes I get responses back. Sometimes I never hear from this person. They probably just think I'm a creepy solicitor and they delete me. But at least you can get an idea of who the person is, and that would be one definitely source or stream to try to connect with that person.
And of course, you can Google their name. If it's something distinctive, you'll find them. I remember I was looking for an owner of this property that was next to an acreage I had for sale, and I wanted to see if they wanted to sell. And guess what his name was?
Bob Smith.
No, think of Golden Arches.
McDonald.
Ronald McDonald. I personally know about 5 Ronald McDonalds, and trying to find a Ronald McDonald to live somewhere in Ontario or BC or Quebec, not an easy thing to do. Your name might be a little easier. Mine would probably be super easy. What?
Oh, and you're saying MLS data. So just to summarize, social media, see if you can find them. MLS data, see if there's any information. Sometimes it's just as easy if they had it listed years ago to have your realtor reach out to that other realtor that may have had an expired or canceled listing and just say, hey, do they have an interest in selling? It's so simple. You don't have to overcomplicate the situation, which is the value in working with a realtor. And then, yes, tax records.
That's actually what happened in this case. He talked to the agent that sold the lot because it had transacted in 2019. And with the permission of the buyer, he gave it to this guy, and this guy called that guy, and the guy said he wasn't interested in selling. Okay. He said it was like detective work solved. I have a friend that's a photographer and a videographer. I'm listing my house with you, Patty. Is this a bad idea to hire a friend to do all this stuff, or a really bad idea in most cases?
Most cases.
Is real estate photography and videography that difficult, or is it specialized?
It is specialized. And I was just at an appointment yesterday and having this very conversation with my clients. And so there's straight video, straight photography. You've got agents that feel too that they're going to use their friend but they're missing out. And I won't necessarily, it's entirely up to you, Michael, to do a plug for who we use. However, our videographer creates lifestyle video. He adds creativity to them. It's not just a house tour where you walk through and someone has the camera, their videographer has the camera on the tripod. You're scanning each room. They put a little bit of music to it. It's done. Bob's your uncle. There's your end product. It should have some level of creativity. I always refer back to our listing that we had many years ago, Michael, on Ponnell Street, where we didn't even see the outside of this property because it was the dead of winter. And our guy came in and he showcased it as a piece of art with a grandfather clock ticking, taking you back in time to appreciate the 100-plus-year-old wallpaper and the 200-plus-year-old crown molding. That is a specialist when it comes to doing video. And the same with architectural photography. It's not so easy. Everyone thinks they can photograph a room. It's not so easy.
The most important thing about a listing, number one, is the pictures. Number two would probably be the description. Number three would probably be the video. Because I notice when I look at the stats, a lot of people aren't viewing the videos. I have no idea why, because they're usually more informative than the pictures. Maybe they don't want to use up the bandwidth on the phone.
Well, maybe they didn't like the pictures. Are these on your listings or?
Never my listing. They're all your listings. They looked at it and they ran away.
I do agree with the order, though. I do feel pictures they should prime. They high value. You shouldn't shortcut or cheap out on high quality photography for your property being advertised onto the market. Overview, very important. If they get past the pictures, they read the story. Does this property meet my needs and my criteria? Does it create the dream or the lifestyle that I'm looking for? And then yes, if they're really sold on the property or very interested, then they definitely would be clicking through the video. I just don't think these people were sold on the property.
Bottom line is, don't hire a friend to do your photos and your pictures unless they happen to be the number one photographer and videographer on the island. We're moving along to more funny stuff.
It could cost them a lot of money and they don't even realize it.
Tens or hundreds of thousands if the house sits on the market and then they're wondering why it hasn't sold. It's because the pictures are not good and they're sending the wrong ideas to a potential buyer. Funny stuff. I was on one of my trainings. You're away on home inspections. And this was funny stuff relating to PEI. And then there's another one I remember from Florida. So what was happening is lead. You've heard of lead pipes?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not something you want in a house.
No.
So what people were doing is they're painting the pipes copper. Can you imagine?
That is not right.
Not only is it not right, but it's overly funny. So the way you can tell, and I've never seen this before, I just thought it was hilarious and terrible. You scrape the copper pipe and underneath you'll see tinny looking lead. But this is something this particular home inspector from Alberta has found. But I remember back when I spent a month in Florida looking at houses in the great real estate crash, they had something called Chinese drywall, and it would turn your copper wiring in your breaker panel or your heat pump black. So what people were doing, because back then you didn't even arrange showings back then, everything was for sale. Most people just broke into the houses because most of them were owned by Bank of America. But people were actually putting posters on houses that didn't have Chinese drywall and saying there was Chinese drywall. And then they're taking a black magic marker and coloring the copper wires black in order to decrease the amount of bids that would come in on this house.
So do you think these were the sellers that were losing their property?
No, sellers have lost the house. These are all bankruptcies back in the real estate crash in the U.S. So these, mainly, most of the houses I looked at were Bank of America houses, and it was potential buyers.
That's what I was just
breaking into these properties, putting fake posters saying there's Chinese drywall because no one wanted a Chinese drywall house because you'd have to gut it to the frame.
So they went out in a multiple offer situation.
Right. So they would color the wires black with a magic marker. And my friend that I was with, Bob, he's from Florida, he said, look, this is just magic marker. He said, that poster, this is just a photocopy of another house that had Chinese drywall. What people will do, do your due diligence is the bottom line. Make sure you have a good home inspector.
Yeah, didn't your brother buy a house many years ago with lead pipes?
Yes, and he brags about what a great deal he had, and he told me that it not only has lead pipes, I think it has asbestos too. Is that the one next to the nuclear waste site?
Oh, he lives in Hamilton.
And he tells me that his lawyer and real estate agent had him sign a ton of disclaimers.
Yeah, that was many years ago,
Yes.
but pretty, buyer beware.
Awesome deal, Danny. Keep up the good work. Asbestos and lead pipes are probably on their way back. Seriously, stay away from those houses. That's it, Patty.
Yeah.
We'll let you do what you do best, which is wrapping this bunch of shenanigans up.
Thank you for listening to an episode of the Michael and Patty Show, otherwise known as MAPS, the island podcast that helps guide and navigate you through the buying and selling of PEI properties and everything at Prince Edward Island as well. We appreciate each and every one of you who tune in and listen to us, and stay tuned to the next exciting episode.
We'd appreciate them more if they did what?
If they liked, gave us...
I don't think you can like a podcast. You have to follow or subscribe.
Follow or subscribe.
Give it a star rating, which would be 5 stars, and leave some feedback.
Yes, and let us know what you'd like to hear us discuss perhaps on a future episode. We'd love to hear from you. We do get some messages with regards to topics and that, so we will definitely make sure that you are featured on there. And if you want us to say your name and give you a shout out, we're more than happy to do that as well.
Bye for now.
Bye for now. Have a great day.